Episode 7, Sorbet, written by Jesse Alexander and Brian Fuller, directed by James Foley. Will Graham gives a lecture explaining that the Chesapeake Ripper kills his victims in sounders of 3. Meanwhile, we see an emotionally moved Hannibal Lecter attend the opera at a charity function, where he is watched by his patient Franklin and his friend Tobias. Jack Crawford starts having nightmares over the fate of his ex-trainee, Miriam Lass. Jack and Will attend a crime scene suspected to be a victim of the Chesapeake Ripper, but Will's empathy and study of the evidence suggests to him that it was a DIY surgery gone wrong. Hannibal continues his sessions with Franklin, where Franklin's difficulty in maintaining a professional distance from his therapy becomes more apparent, frustrated that they can't be friends. Hannibal sees his own psychiatrist, Dr. Bedelia de Maurier, who affirms her own relationship with Hannibal as professional, not friendly. Will then sees Hannibal for his own session, where they continue to blur the lines between simple conversations and a professional relationship. Hannibal suggests that the murder may have been a result of organ harvesting. We see a flashback of Hannibal encountering the rude insurance medical professional Andrew Caldwell, whom he then sabotages the car of and stalks down as his next victim. Caldwell's body is discovered severed in 2, sitting across from himself in a bus, organs missing. Hannibal and Alana prepare a meal together, effortlessly flirtatious, though their conversation steers towards Will. Jack's nightmares worsen, envisioning the corpse of Will similarly missing an arm like Miriam Lass. We see a montage of Hannibal preparing several organs with business cards collected in his Rolodex of victims, and the FBI science squad are left with an array of cadavers with missing organs and the confusion of who is and isn't a potential victim of the Chesapeake Ripper. Franklin expresses the pain of loneliness to Hannibal, only for Hannibal to find himself alone when Will doesn't attend his next session. Hannibal tracks him down to his classroom, where he was experiencing a dissociative waking nightmare in which he saw Abigail as his daughter. Together, Hannibal and Will survey the photos of the new murder victims. Thanks to Beverly's detective skills, Jack tracks down Will and therefore also Hannibal and recruits them to catch who he believes to be the Chesapeake Ripper. They find Devin Silvestri performing another botched DIY surgery in the back of an ambulance, and Hannibal takes over to save their life so that Silvestri can be arrested, and Will looks on in what can be possibly described as awe. The episode ends with Will leaving Hannibal to throw a grand performative dinner party for the Baltimore social elites, utilising his latest kills. Welcome to Fate and Circumstance, a Hannibal fan podcast where one person who likes the show a lot makes 2 people who now also like the show watch the show. My name is Felix Fanfaron Fern. I am one of your hosts, and these are my co-hosts.
Hello, I am Melisa Suzan, and I definitely like the show a lot.
Hello, I'm Shaira Bambi. And yeah, I'm going to sing my name every time.
Nice.
I had a couple of things I wanted to say at the start, and I have to remember what they are. Okay, one of them was we had a question on Twitter, which I can't answer, which is a great start. Someone tagged me. I'm going to find it so that I remember what I'm responding to.
Oh, okay. Is it something that you can't answer, but we can?
Neither of us can. So... So Ash tagged me to say, question for the podcast eventually, how am I supposed to function day to day when this shot of him exists? And it's a very beautiful gif of Will. However, it's a very beautiful gif of Will from season 2. So I can't answer that, but we will get to it eventually.
Oh, okay.
It's a good thing I haven't seen it then.
Thankfully, if you do come across the gif, it's beautiful, but it won't give anything away.
Okay.
Okay, fine.
But it is... It's a spoilery scene, but not the GIF itself.
Okay.
The other thing I wanted to mention was last episode, talking about the Chesapeake Ripper, and my assumption was that the Chesapeake Ripper is called the Chesapeake Ripper because he killed in the Chesapeake area of Virginia. Now, I have since discovered, through the current episode that we are on, episode 7, I don't think that Hannibal has ever murdered anyone in the Chesapeake Bay area.
Oh.
So Will explains at the start of the episode that murders took place in Essex, Annapolis, and Baltimore. which are all very close together. They're all in like the Maryland area.
Mm-hmm.
And then Chesapeake is all the way down Virginia, way past Wolf Trap, way past any of the characters in this show.
Oh.
So I tried looking it up, right? I was like, okay, well, the term is used in the book, so surely there's an explanation as to why he's called the Chesapeake Ripper.
Okay.
There isn't.
There's no reason.
Brilliant.
Okay.
Fucking none. So I have absolutely no idea why he's called the Chesapeake Ripper.
Okay, so it's a
Sounds
mystery
nice.
that we've all yet to know.
Yeah, I don't think the author of the book knows. So that's cool.
It just sounds cool. Yes.
It does sound cool.
Yeah.
Like, you know why he's called the Ripper? Because he rips. Because, Jack the Ripper, also surgical knowledge. But that's it. Chesapeake? Nah, no idea.
Nope.
He lets them rip.
He does let them rip.
Stinky boy.
The next episode is actually called Fromage, so that's the stinky episode.
Fair.
Okay, so talking points. We're going straight into Hannibal because of the second scene with
Good
the
Hannibal
opera
scenes.
function.
Such good Hannibal scenes for this episode.
He's so beautiful.
So
It's a very
beautiful.
Hannibal-centric episode.
Yes.
So we have discussed Hannibal's behavior in terms of meeting symptoms of psychopathy or sociopathy before. But in this episode, we see hints. Oh my god, Cat, I'm going to rip your vocal cords out. It worked. He stopped. Are you going to stay stopped? Don't lick your lips at me, you piece of shit. No. Stop.
Hear me sing.
He's probably going to yell, so I'll just have to deal with that.
No.
Do
Well,
you
because-
have any thoughts on Hannibal's emotional response to music?
Is it bad that I laughed?
Oh my god, you bastard!
It was cute.
Cruel!
Yeah, it was just not what I was expecting, but it's also like, I get it, but it was just the very zoomed in shot of his eyes welling up and then him being the first one to very quickly stand up and start clapping. I was like, this is the funniest shit. I did think it was funny initially.
He's so cruel.
I'd be that kind of person who's first one to stand up and start clapping. Especially if I like
Same.
emotional response.
Same here. I just thought from him in general that it's like another perspective, so it was just quite funny. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh my god, he's getting emotional.
Off point quickly, but weirdly, everything else didn't upset me. Lots of things have not upset me in the show. The one thing that did upset me was the camera down that opera singer's throat. I was like, "Oh no!"
To be fair, I've seen that before. Like in general, I've seen it happen. Or I've seen videos of like your little voice box and that. So
Yeah.
it didn't put me off. But if that was the first time I was seeing it, I think I would also be like, oh my god, what the fuck? But I think going back to your question of like, about his reaction to the music, I'm wondering if it's because, I mean, all organs do, if you think about it, a significant, like, their own unique job. But I think maybe like this little, like your literal throat and your voice box, it's almost like some people can master it to sound a certain way than others. That's why we have like professional singers and so on and so forth. Like, everyone can sing, but people have certain talents with it. And I think maybe he has, because he obviously enjoys people's organs, I was just thinking maybe like, because this one is so, I don't know, talented, so special. Like, of course, like a fucking heart being able to keep your whole body alive by pumping blood is pretty fucking cool. But like, I don't know, maybe he has like a certain appreciation for the sound and it's like another sensory thing. And he's very, he's a very elegant and exquisite man himself. So he's just like, oh my God, organs are amazing. I love this one so much. That was my thoughts about it when I was watching him get emotional.
I think that's a really, really interesting interpretation of bringing it more down to a biology level.
Yeah, actually, I like that. I totally went a completely different way. But yeah, no, I really find that really good. That's an interesting point where it's almost like, oh, he's tasting the organs through the act of listening. But yeah, pretty cool.
Yeah, I think that's super interesting. I know I've seen some people in general suggest that maybe, I heard you use the word sensory. Some people have suggested that maybe Hannibal has a thing for sensory overload.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, that's something that I put down in my kind of my thoughts as well. But yeah, my thoughts were like we know. Like, I was trying to answer the question specifically, with psychopathy. But like we know, Hannibal sees himself more elated than his peers, so why would he just fit into those stereotypes of psychopathy or sociopathy? And then also I did write there is a need for stimulation in like psychopathy, so it could be that side of him as well. Like he needs that overwhelming stimulation because stimulation, otherwise he gets bored. So it's also another reason that he needs it. He needs it, and he has such a profound reaction to it. So maybe it's that need that triggers the emotional response. Similarly, I also liked the fact that it's kind of written as stereotypical bad guys who like classical music, and that's that was kind of a fun media thing to pick up on.
He does have a lot of like classic elegant bad guy traits.
He does have a lot of classical elegant bad guy traits. It's really cool. I kind of like the classical bad guys, intelligent, um, sophisticated, all of those fun words.
It's the kind of villain you kind of want to root for because they're pretty.
Yeah.
Pretty villains.
You know, I think that's really interesting. I think, yeah, I think it goes along the lines of like Hannibal enjoying beautiful things, and therefore it makes sense that music is one of them. And yeah, no, I think that does tie together with everything. I think the biology aspect is really interesting because obviously he's also, even if you take away the cannibalism and the psychopathy, he's also or was a surgeon, so it would be interesting for him to be generally interested in the mechanics of the human body.
Yeah.
And yeah, I like the idea of him kind of wanting to indulge in sensory overload. Because he kind of does that with cooking and everything as well, because he takes cooking to an extreme level.
He does, yeah.
And there is things with like certain cooking when you go to like restaurants of the kind of level that he is cooking at, which I would say is very like high fine dining. There are a lot of places that it's like a full immersive experience where you're having a load of senses, where you'll hear a sound being played or music being played, and also visuals, and then there's like something being smoked in front of you, so you smell it. Like it's eating can be like a whole sensory thing of just being fully immersed in it. So I wonder if he's got that from wanting to cook in the way that he, I don't know, maybe is incorporating sounds, music, however, into his food as well. He just sees it all as a art form. I think he's just a very artsy guy. he's very fancy pants artsy dude. He likes the finer things in life. Yeah. And just psychopaths are fucking weird, isn't it? So maybe it's just that a bit of that. He's just like, oh my god, I'm so moved by this singer, which, by the way, obviously very beautiful, very talented, can move anybody. But just maybe that he's so full of emotion, so overwhelmed emotion from probably sensory overload. He's just like, absolutely, yes, I'm in love right now. It's fucking psychopath weirdness as well. Maybe just a bit of a sprinkle of that.
I mean, I completely agree with what you say when it comes to fine dining and the way that he does cooking. So, as you probably know, when it comes to cooking and eating, taste is 80% smell and only 20% actually your taste buds sending messages to your brain. And of course, there's visuals as well. And I think that ties in completely with when we see him speaking with the Ellen Green character. Her name is Mrs. Komeda. Which I don't know if it's said in the show. I don't think it is. But that is her name. She's Mrs. Komeda. It ties in completely with her speaking about dinner parties and the fact that they're a performance. She doesn't really talk about the food. Yeah. She talks about the element of attending one. It's also the kind of the first time we know that he's fancy. We know that he's affluent, but it's the first time we see him as a socialite. Which is also interesting. Yeah, there's another element, I think, of the psychopathy thing there. Well, how he blends in with people and how he has social influence over people as well. Yeah, that whole scene, I think, actually says a surprising amount about Hannibal's character. And I think you've both picked up on a lot to do with that. I'll mention. I will probably towards the end speak about the music in the episode in general, But because we're speaking about that scene, I'll mention a little bit about the opera.
Yes.
You mentioned before, Shaira, that you'd picked up on what the song is. Do you have any thoughts on it?
Yeah, so I'm not exactly sure. Like I've heard it before. I know I can't say it very well. It's Pandro la Sorte Mia, which is one of my kind of favorite opera songs because I just like a lot. I can't really stand and listen to opera that long because it just it grates to me. But I love if I find an opera song that I particularly go, that's interesting. I wonder what the actual story behind it is, and I like to go in and reread some of the stories. So I knew the story of this one and about Cleopatra and and everything else. And it's very, I don't know what's the word for it. It's very interesting that song was chosen with Hannibal's cry and stuff like that. So it's that whole song is about lamenting. At least that's what I remember. I can't remember specifics, so maybe there's a bit of lamenting of his own life in it.
Yeah, I mean, it's lamenting, and also I think it's Cleopatra's. I'm trying to remember now. Cleopatra's kind of singing about Caesar because it's from Handel's Julius Caesar.
Yes.
And then towards the end, because she knows the inevitable is coming, it also then becomes about revenge as well.
Yes.
And killing people as a ghost. So that's cool. But so an interesting thing about this song choice is it's not what was originally going to be used. It's not the song that's listed specifically in the script, which was a song from Verdi's Trovatore. So we don't really know why that song was chosen either. However, so the opera singer performing this is Emily Klassen, and she chose the song because they were kind of choose a song that you think will work well, and she went for something she knew that she could sing easily. There wouldn't be any issues with it. It was something she was well practiced at.
Yeah.
Which is why it's kind of she's singing the less emotional part of the song, which kind of makes it interesting that Hannibal is so overwhelmed because it's not actually the kind of sad part of the song, but it's more audibly impressive, that part of the song, so it works very well for the scene. And she was asked why she chose the song and why she kind of thinks it works for Hannibal.
Yeah.
It turns out she is a fan of the show. And her kind of thoughts were maybe some of the reasons that he responds to it the way he does is because he's connecting to the music and he's overwhelmed by the music, and also that he's thinking maybe about his own future and potentially his feelings for Will. Which made me happy that I'm yeah, she's a proper fan. She ships, hell yeah. So I love Emily Klassen. One extra little thing about that song is just I love that the first big piece of music we hear in this episode hugely features the harpsichord, because the harpsichord is one of Hannibal's favourite instruments. So that makes me happy. He prefers it over the piano, which I love.
Interesting. He's just quirky like that.
He is just quirky like that. It has to be different. Can't just be a fucking piano, can it?
Do you know what I mean?
It's got to be different.
It has to be a harpsichord.
Me being different is saying I like the triangle.
I like the harpsichord because it reminds me of a similar instrument in Bangladesh, which I keep forgetting the name of, but it's similar to that. It's similar, it's a piano with a harp kind of thing. And my brain is kind of forgetting. Yeah, I will remember it eventually.
I was going to say, if you suddenly remember, just yell it.
Yes, I will.
Instruments like that are interesting because they're kind of more difficult than a piano because there's a delay between the key and the workings.
Yeah, well, I forget. It's less of a harp. It's more of a piano / accordion.
Ooh.
Yeah. I'll let you know when I remember it.
Instruments are cool. I'll briefly mention as well, because I rambled about her. Yeah, Mrs. Komeda is played by Ellen Green, who I mentioned during our watch before we recorded this, who I know as Audrey from Little Shop of Horrors, both on stage and in the film. So she's kind of like a gay icon.
It took me a bit because I thought she was, I forgot her name now, the woman from Matilda, who I absolutely love because she's a lovely person. She just has a similar kind of way of talking. Rhea Perlman, that's who I was thinking of. And then I was like, oh no, that's all. As soon as you mentioned her name, that I recognise that. Like she's from somewhere I've watched previously.
Yeah, as soon as you think of Audrey and then listen to her, your brain will go, ah.
Yes, Audrey, yes.
Yeah, because the specific way that she speaks, she's got a very interesting, high, airy voice.
Yeah, I was thinking Rhea Perlman because Rhea Perlman also has a high, airy voice, but I was also I watched Matilda the other day, so digression.
Love them green. So in this episode, we get introduced to Gillian Anderson's character, Dr. Too many letters, too many consonants, Dr. Bedelia du Maurier. Her scene is quite brief, but I wanted to know what your first impressions of her are.
It's fucking me up that she's speaking in an American accent.
She is American.
Yeah, which I refuse to believe.
No, I always think she's British and she's not. It's a lie.
Apparently she grew up in London, though.
Yeah, she lives there now as well.
Yeah, now she's not British. It hurt me that she's not British, but at the same time, like,
has she got like a blended accent, or is it like predominantly American and like?
She sounds quite American when she speaks normally, but it's not a very thick, heavy accent.
Okay, because I was thinking like, I mean, I know it's obviously like a decent accent, and at the end of the day, she's the successful actress. I'm not, but it sounded like almost like the American accent was put on, so that's why it fucked my brain. I was like,
it does. She seems like a British person doing an American accent, right?
Yeah, and I was like, not that it's terrible, but it doesn't sound natural.
Yeah, it did sound like
incredibly well done, though. I loved the scene. It was very like she was giving very cool, calm, and collected, bit almost like Hannibal. Actually, she was very like chilled. She was very like, I don't know. It was very, very entitled. I was just like, oh, she's really cool. What do I fancy her? What am I feeling here? I'm a bit confused.
Oh, I definitely fancy her.
Yeah,
she's beautiful.
She's beautiful. Yeah. Bedelia reminds me of Hannibal. Hannibal of Alana in a way. Just seeing that parallel. Kind of like a sane voice in Hannibal's. I wouldn't say crazy. I don't like using the crazy voice. Or I wouldn't even use the word insane for Hannibal. I don't think he's insane, or I don't think he's crazy at all. But I know a sane voice works for him. And then obviously I had to just go to so beautiful because he's played by Gillian Anderson, who's just an amazing actor, and we were just talking so much about her anyway.
I adore her. I think I do think she speaks in a very specifically strange way in this role, and I think it works really well. She sounds a little bit odd because she feels almost alien to every other character to me, which I think works incredibly well with Hannibal, who is also a bit weird and out there compared to everyone else. I agree with the comparison to Alana because she doesn't take his bullshit.
No, not at all. Dude, like I could tell that she was like, nope, I'm not taking your bullshit. Like you are not truthful to me. You have a mask on.
Mm-hmm. Like he almost looks a little bit put off or a little bit upset sometimes when he talks to her because she's calling him out.
Yeah.
But he clearly doesn't think she's rude, though, because she's still alive.
No.
Then again, Will is still alive, so...
Yeah, Will is still alive.
I think it's more of a control of the situation and knowing how people think and feel. I feel like certain people feel more comfortable when they are, like, in charge of the situation. He's definitely someone that, obviously, to, keep his life secret and kind of not getting incarcerated, he needs to know everyone's like next 10 moves, and he needs to know how people think and feel, and he kind of wants to control how people think and feel. So it's almost like if someone's calling him out and then he feels a bit like, oh, that's not really what I came here for or what I wanted, and he's just like, I don't like that. I feel like it's a little change, slight change, not enough to make him be like, okay, cool, you're gonna be dinner next week, but I think enough for him to be like, oh, right, okay. Didn't need to call me out like that, I feel like.
I think that's a very interesting point, actually, the idea of control, because if he has a psychiatrist who does call him out and does acknowledge the things he's not admitting to other people, he's getting an insight into what other people may see in him, which would give him a heads up, potentially, to suspicion.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a very good thought process, actually.
Yeah.
But yeah, the way she speaks to him is very interesting. And then we get the term person suit, Which I'm just incredibly glad that it's finally out there, because when we've been talking about Hannibal and the way he presents himself to other people, I've been kind of like, Hannibal the human. All I've been wanting to say is Hannibal's person suit. Now I can. I didn't want to spoil it. Because it is the perfect description of what he is and what he does.
Yeah.
It's him pretending to be a person to other people, and Bedelia so far is the only person who knows. It does sound gross.
It sounds disgusting.
Well, it gives allusions to, like, Ed Gein, who was cannibalistic and created clothing and furniture out of human skin, which has parallels with Silence of the Lambs, which was inspired by Ed Gein and has a villain in it who is inspired by Ed Gein. So in a way, that all kind of ties together with the idea of a person suit with some real-world scary people. Let's move on to Jack Crawford, who he has like 2 or 3 different nightmares in this episode. I think he has 2, and then at the end, I kind of don't know if it's a nightmare or not. I don't think it is. It's him doing his business. But his nightmares seem to suggest that his guilt is increasing, because he's imagining Will as an artless corpse, like how he perceives Miriam Lass to be. Do you have any thoughts on this, or if you think he's basically destined to have happen to Will what happened to Miriam?
I think he's thinking about it more maybe now, and I don't know if it's maybe just a big comment on this kind of industry and what it can do to people. Like, even if you've been in the game for such a long amount of time, it can still affect you mentally. Like, Jack has a lot going on. He has so much going on, and he's literally reliving previous trauma. It was bound to kind of affect him in some kind of way. You know, like I feel like it's almost that he's gone such a long time of it not affecting him in this kind of way. And then all of a sudden we see something very, very disturbing. I mean, it always is, but I think it's just a comment on him, because I feel like we've seen him in such for me anyway, seen him in such a way that is very, like, demanding, very sort of, like, not angry, but kind of an essence of angry, of, like, I want to find this, I want to sort this out, do it, and kind of pushing Will a little bit. And maybe now he's sort of pushed himself a little bit too much, and we're sort of seeing him be a bit overworked and a bit tired.
I think in similar vein, but I think he is feeling a lot of guilt, and I think he's destined to make the same mistake. But I think it's in a similar vein, where in that industry you will be making the same mistake, because he's in a very high position, so he has to remain stoic. He has to remain like he's not emotionally compromised. Otherwise, he's not going to get anywhere, because he wants to get the bad guy. He's going to do it with he's going to do it, and he's not going to care about the sacrifices. And though it does, like, haunt him, there is like, he's not going to care at the moment that of the sacrifices he's going to make. It's going to haunt him later. So he's going to sacrifice Will in a way to get what he wants, to get the Chesapeake Ripper, to get the bad guys, and to almost to kind of win in the end of the day, and it's with no cost being too high.
Maybe he didn't really process too much of what happened with Miriam, because you know how with certain traumas you kind of just put it in a box and straight to the back of your brain, and never to be sort of touched again until something unprovoked. Something provokes it, even. Something just comes up randomly, and then all of a sudden that box is opened without you even wanting it to be. So maybe it's like the fact that they're sort of reliving it and going through sort of the details of the case of Miriam Lass, and then literally her arm, that is fucking terrifying and scary. And now he's having to, like, go through everything that happened, and maybe it's a bit of a weird trauma response that he's having these very vivid visions and dreams and such, that, I don't know, maybe it's just his way of his brain reacting to it.
Yeah. Well, maybe he's finally kind of realizing that his way of doing things isn't good, because
I think you're probably right. I think the chances of Jack having not properly addressed what happened to Miriam, or not knowing what happened to Miriam, it is probably something that, he just kind of swept to the side because he focuses on his job. So you're probably right that, like, maybe he's only actually acknowledging or visiting and experiencing the trauma for the first time because of what he's doing with Will, which would explain why he's suddenly having nightmares. I think that is very likely.
Yeah.
If anyone needs therapy, it's actually probably Jack Crawford.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, everyone around him goes for therapy, but he doesn't.
He's probably in that generation of where like it's not really that well educated about as he was sort of like in the field or getting into it. It's probably definitely, you know, knows now that, you know, people should have therapy and definitely do, obviously. But I think maybe sometimes when you grow up in a certain generation and a certain society in a way, like you kind of forget that you should also have those things, if that makes sense.
I think in his role in the behavioural sciences unit, he's probably aware of the importance of it, which is why he wants Will to have stability.
Yeah.
But he probably considers himself, like, not the same. Yeah, I would imagine that he is probably someone who kind of, like, feels like, yeah, it's needed for other people, but not for me. I'm different because my upbringing. So I think you're probably right. I'm going to ask you a really silly question just out of the blue because I thought of it. Do you think that Jack Crawford is going to catch the Chesapeake Ripper?
Isn't that not asking if he's going to catch Hannibal, but then does the Chesapeake Ripper even exist? If it's actually just Hannibal.
To our knowledge, Hannibal is the Chesapeake Ripper. We don't know if it's necessarily just Hannibal. I'm just asking from a point of view from watching the show. Do you think he's going to catch him?
No.
Cool.
For this is the thing. For what we have seen, like for what we have yet to watch, no, I don't think so. But I feel like if they were to carry on the season and give us new, carry on the show, and give us new seasons, I think maybe, yeah.
Cool. I think that's just one of those fun things we can look at later, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I just love stupid questions.
Well, yeah, maybe he'll catch him. I don't think he's gonna be specifically the one that's gonna catch the Chesapeake Reaper.
I would, having watched this point in the show, I would probably answer the same as you. No, because that would kind of stop the show.
Yeah.
But we'll see what happens. Sweetie Swag, it's the Nightmare Stag. We get to see our beautiful boy. However, this time, Will does not see the stag in a dream. He sees him during one of his reenactments. He also loses time, during which he does have a dream, or what we'd interpret to be a dream, because we don't know if he's necessarily asleep. But he sees himself with Abigail and the corpse of Hannibal's victim, Cassie Boyle, mounted on antlers. So everything's kind of merging. So he's having a nightmare, but he's not asleep, and he's seeing the stag, but he's not asleep or losing time. So with the mysterious stuff going on with Will, any thoughts on what the fuck is going on? It's completely understandable if you say no.
Yeah, I just, I'm like, how much can someone's brain actually be like fucked by something? I don't even know if anything else other than like it's clearly just eating him up.
Well, the boy has gone through a lot of trauma, and I think as previously he's starting to get himself fully immersed in being what's the name, Gareth Jacob Hobbs. In a way, it feels like he's starting to feel himself merging with that person.
Yeah, because he sees himself as Abigail's dad.
He does.
He always puts himself in the position of like the murderer or whoever, and he still sees himself as that guy. Yeah.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, maybe he'll do this. Maybe he'll do the same with the Chesapeake Ripper / Hannibal. And then also it could double back to some of the earlier episodes where we kind of it's hinted that Will may have a tumor in his brain, and it could be like the source of his power. And also currently his mental breakdown now. So it could be similar to that. That's kind of my thoughts on it.
Yeah, we are still in the mystery position, but yes. I would suggest it seems like it's getting worse.
It's 100% getting worse.
Yeah.
Pervading with everyday life.
Yeah, I think that's the main comment on it. Yeah. And I think I stand by what I said before. I think all of this can be seen as a just a comment on how this kind of line of work just can affect anyone mentally.
Fucking Jack could have let Will out, but instead he had to manipulate him.
Yeah,
interesting. God damn Jack.
People love manipulation in this show.
Yeah, people love manipulation in the show. Except with Lana and except with Lana, I like Lana.
Yeah, I would definitely say Alana has not shown any signs of manipulation. Well,
No.
actually, no, that's not true. No, Alana has, but not in an unkind way, in the way that she treats Will a little bit, because she kind of treats him as a project instead of a person a little bit.
Oh.
But I don't think she's doing it in a mean way, but she has openly mentioned the fact that she didn't want to be in a room alone with him, and she doesn't want to let her desire to study him overtake her friendship with him. So I think there's a little bit of manipulation, but it doesn't mean it's necessarily a negative thing.
Yeah. Okay.
But Alana's an interesting character.
Yeah.
They're all interesting characters. So we're going to slip back to Hannibal, as it is the very, very Hannibal episode. So we've pointed out common theme of parallels in the show before. There's been so many of them, and we love them. This episode presents one of the most transparent parallels out of any episode, which is the concept of friendship. So Franklin wants to be Hannibal's friend, but as his patient, it would be inappropriate. Hannibal wants to be Bedelia's friend, and it's a similar issue. She has to point out that they are not friends. They have a professional and patient relationship. So it'd be inappropriate. However, Hannibal has also shown a desire to want to be friends with Will, despite the power imbalance going in the opposite direction, because of the way he reacts after his appointment with Franklin, and they're talking about friendship and how being lonely can hurt. And then it immediately transitions to Will not being his appointment and Hannibal moping around like a sad puppy. So, what is your impression? What does that tell us about Hannibal's wants or needs? Because again, we've seen him as a very put-together, controlled character who has social influence and standing, and then we see him look all sad.
I think it's more of a image versus his actual person. I think when it comes to giving off an image that he wants people to have in order to protect himself, of course, I think he finds it easy, because it's almost like people that mask in social situations. I feel like it's like you want to perceive yourself and get through the situation potentially, and kind of maybe wants to give off the fact that, is collected and a certain way and, popular and what have you. And without trying to be social, he ends up being social in a way. But when he wants to actually try, or what he actually feels inside, he feels lonely. And literally, the look of him, as you said, as he opened the door and he wasn't there, it's like, oh, okay. Looking around at his desk and he's like, I need my man. Where is he? I feel like there's a contrast of how he wants to perceive himself and how he actually feels. I think how he actually feels is the complete opposite to how he perceives himself.
Yeah, I think pretty similarly. But Hannibal, I feel like Hannibal loves openly, and actually, no, correction, he is open and he's sure of himself, and he knows what he wants. So it could be, so we see you're saying, it is two different sides of him, where he's sure of himself, but then at the time that he's sad there. I think it's just the same person, but him showing his kind of showing who he is in the way that he knows what he wants. He wants to be friends with he wants to be friends with Bedelia. He doesn't want to be friends with Franklin. Who wants to be friends with Franklin? Franklin's a good dude, but also he annoys me a little bit.
Franklin annoys me.
Franklin's good. He's a cheese man, but he's also way too in your face. Excuse me. Step back.
You feel for him, don't you? But you're like, all right, babe. It's I don't know. You don't want to be mean, but it is a little bit you're pushing. But all right, we get it.
You get it. And
I was just banging my head against the wall when I was watching the whole interaction. I'm like, okay, we get it. You clearly. The thing is, everyone has their thing. He just wants to have a friend, and that in itself is not a bad thing. Bless his sweet little heart.
But he's going about it the wrong way.
You can't be friends with your bloody therapist.
Yeah, or you can't be friends with this therapist, and also
No, you definitely don't want to be friends with that therapist.
yeah, you don't want to be that friend with that therapist. Also,
I love Franklin.
why do you love about Franklin so much?
So I love Franklin because he's a lost cause.
Oh,
He means well. He really means well. He's harmless. He's genuinely, in my opinion, harmless.
Yeah.
Not everyone might agree with that.
Exactly.
But that he's one of those people. Everyone has a friend or knows someone who's harmless and means well, but they just fucking piss you off with how irritating they are. And you have to deal with the fact that it's not their fault. They don't mean to be irritating. They just are. And that's Franklin. Franklin's that friend. And it's like, you want to bully him. Because he's useless and he would be so easy to bully, but you shouldn't because it's not his fault.
Yeah.
So I love Franklin because he's useless.
Do you know what he is? Franklin is the so you've got your cousins, your favorite cousins have come over, yeah, for the week. They've come out of town. They're from out of town. They've come to you. And they're staying with you for a week. You're like, oh my God, it's going to be the best weekend of our frigging lives. And you and your cousin that's like the same age as you, you're really excited. You're so pumped. And you're like, oh my God, we're going to play the best games. We're going to have the best fort. Let's freaking go. Let's go to the local park. And then your mum comes out and is like, can you take your little brother Joshua with you, please? Because he needs to be able to play with you. You're not leaving him out. You're like, oh, damn it, it's now ruined. Because obviously you see your little cousin when you're a kid, you see your little sibling, your little brother or sister, like, oh, God, fuck's sake. The annoying one that just has to be with you, and like it's just like one too many characters in your make-believe game. That's him.
Yeah, I agree. He's the little Klingon, the little hanger-on.
Sibling bring with you. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I completely agree.
To involve.
I love these indictments of Franklin. Poor guy.
I love him. It's easy to bully.
Easy to bully. Anyway, moving back to Hannibal.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Yeah. No, I think he likes certain people. He wants to garner friendship with these people. So he wants to garner Bedelia's friend. He wants to be Will's friend. He wants to be Alana's friend. And certain people that I think adds to his kind of group of people, either his group of people that have certain traits that he likes, and then obviously I got my own theory is that he's recruiting for his cannibal thing.
This episode really fucking supports that stupid theory.
It did. There's two Chesapeake Rippers. There's I forgot his. Oh my God! There's Audrey that he talks to, and there's not actually Audrey. There's Audrey that he talks to at the start of the episode. That it wants to be there for dinner. Maybe they're all cannibals as well.
Socialite cannibals.
They're socialite cannibals. There's also that weird interaction with what's his name now?
Tobias.
Yeah, Tobias.
I was wondering if anyone was going to mention that.
Tobias feels like similar. Like I feel like they're acquainted. It feels like they're acquainted.
There's a moment where they look at each other when they're introducing each other with Mrs. Komeda, where like a certain music note plays and they stare at each other.
Oh my God! Yeah, I think I picked up on that, and I was like, Tobias feels like part of his cannibal crew, cannibal ring. Yeah, and then obviously he wants the ones that aren't part of his cannibal ring yet, Bedelia and Will, and also Alana. Alana and Jack, unfortunately, are non-consensually part of the cannibal ring, since they've eaten at his house. And Will, for one episode so far,
with some sausage. Yeah, I think so. I think maybe one of the interesting things with Hannibal, maybe why his kind of feelings towards Will seem just a little different, like in the way he reacts to him not being there, is just because Will is more difficult. Alana and Hannibal have an established rapport. He gets along with her very easily. He gets along with other people very easily, but Will's a sullen, sulky little man.
Yes, he is,
so I think getting his friendship is maybe a bit more of a higher challenge, which is a new thing for Hannibal, I think.
Yeah.
I think Hannibal's probably used to getting his way.
Also, it was really cute. It was really cute, like just opening the door and just seeing his smile move from a smile to a frown. Like, my boyfriend's not here.
One of my favourite montages in the whole show. There's a similar one in season 2, which I can't wait for us to get to. It's so cute. But I have to point out, as we've spoken about Franklin and also Tobias, I have to point out, as we're talking about parallels between friendships, Hannibal asks Franklin if he desires Tobias sexually. Considering that the parallels between friendships and his interest in Will and the idea of trying to be friends with someone who isn't friends with you, which I think is kind of the idea they're trying to present with Hannibal and Will, in that Franklin wants to be friends with Tobias is friends with him, doesn't feel the same way. Hannibal and Will are kind of the same. Is that projection?
Yes, absolutely, 100% projection. So it can't be fully projection, but I do think Will sees Hannibal as a friend, even a little bit. Though still somewhat his psychiatrist. But still, projection.
Think that not Will. Hannibal sort of asks for clarification because I think he doesn't necessarily want to be his psychiatrist, so that there can be a friendlier dynamic between them, or just a bit more so that he's not restricted on how he can love on his man.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's shown that those elements of obsession as well, because we see two sides to it, don't we? We see their interactions where they're becoming closer and more like actually friends, but we also see Hannibal killing people to get his attention. So it's not the healthiest way to try and become someone's friend.
Put it like that, yeah.
The most annoying thing is the fact that without that, they are getting along. So if Hannibal just chilled the fuck out for 5 seconds, he'd probably realise they could be friends without that, but no.
Exactly.
He can't do that.
Right, if Hannibal chilled the fuck out, then Will wouldn't have to go through the trauma that he goes through, and also probably be a bit more in the zone with him. But no,
Hannibal is his own worst enemy.
I feel like he's playing a little mind game, though. I feel like he's just like, I wonder how my little puppet's going to act to this. Oh, it's a little bit cool. I think I fancy him.
Yeah, maybe he's just also going like, I like watching my man work. I like hearing about my man work. Let me give him some more work.
He certainly keeps him busy.
Yeah.
So, stepping back to Franklin just a little bit, I have to mention the cheese. So, Franklin mentions they're cheese folk. And he specifically mentions tyromancy. So, has anyone ever heard of tyromancy, divination by cheese, before?
I didn't, but then it went straight away. I straight away thought of the cheese of truth, and then someone slapping cheese down on a piece of paper, and then just reading the holes. So that's what I thought when they said truth.
You are not too far off. So I'd never heard of tyromancy before, so obviously I had to look it up. So divination by cheese dates back to at least the 2nd century, so it's fucking old. So there are loads of different ways that it could have been done, different ages, different places. One of the common ones is similar to tea leaves. So literally you just look at some cheese and see if you can see any recognisable shapes or images, because that's all you do with tea leaves.
Oh, no.
So people would do that. One other method involved creating 2 fondue-like cheese dishes, then putting some bread into the cheese, then lighting a candle, and then looking at the shadows cast on the wall by the cheese and interpreting those. Which seems like very over the top. Another one, my personal favourite, I read about. I will link where I got this information from in the notes as well, from a great website called cheeseprofessor.com. Another one from the Middle Ages was you wrote the names of different prospective partners onto separate pieces of cheese, and whichever one moulded first was the person you should date. So if you're ever like in between people and monogamous and can't figure it out, get some cheese. And that's tyromancy. I personally would like to campaign for a new class in D&D for the Tyromancer.
Oh yeah, I also want that.
Cheese wizard.
Cheese wizard. I think they're all doing it wrong. I think they should have just done it by the cheese of truth guy. Just throw some cheese with holes in it on a piece of book, and then just read what the words come out as. Easy, simple.
Tyromancy, bring it back. So, my last talking point before I throw some more trivia at you is
Ooh.
you may have thoughts on this or you may not. It's one of those scenes a lot of people come back to later on and think about. I would like to know your thoughts on the scene where Will is watching Hannibal in the ambulance saving Devon Silvestri's victim. It's heavily discussed in the fandom. It's one of the scenes I've seen discussed more than any other. And I'm wondering if you have any thoughts as to why people talk about it.
I wonder why.
Admiration. Admiration. He's admiring our Hanny. The same admiration of the Chesapeake Ripper, I think. So.
Yeah, is that what you think's going through Will's head?
Yeah, I believe so. Just admiration.
What do you think, Alyssa?
I have mixed emotions. I'm not gonna lie. I have a mixed emotion because I was looking at it, and first I was like, oh, like there's a weird, like, not weird. There's just like that sense of like, oh, a little bit like admiralty, like when you watch someone do like that you're interested in or that you like or you're with, and they're doing something that they're good and they're doing it well, it's their job or whatever, it's very sexy, right? And so I was just like, oh, there's a element of like, oh, Will's watching him work and like be like, oh, this is interesting, because obviously Hannibal's mostly always watching Will work and figure out things, and he's, as they're talking, it's sort of basically watching Will's mind work and the way that he works things out. And for once it was Will watching Hannibal, and it's just a bit like, oh, there's an admiration. But in Will's face, I was also screaming at him, wake up, bro, like fucking realize. And I don't know if there was a little bit of a mix of that, of like, oh, I fancy you because you look quite hot right now, but why are you so good? Like, you're quite good at being a surgeon, obviously, because you're a surgeon. There's a bit of a weird thing that's maybe scratching at the back of my head, but I don't really want to about that because I want to think you look good whilst you're doing all this.
So
and then, yeah, so I'm just like, yeah, I feel like maybe is he starting to think twice about Hannibal, and that's why I was literally screaming at my TV, like, fucking wake up, bro. Like, but I think mix of both. So that's why I had mixed feelings about the whole ordeal.
So I can tell you what the script says.
Okay. Go for it.
It just says Will's inscrutable expression as he observes. That's it. So the script tells us nothing.
Yes, it doesn't.
On purpose.
Brian Fuller has retroactively given thoughts on the scene.
Oh.
And he said that the way Will looks at Hannibal is the look of, if he were able to disconnect his mind well enough, that's when he would be figuring out that Hannibal is the Chesapeake Ripper. But his brain isn't there yet.
Yeah.
And a lot of people love to talk about what that scene means. And the fun thing is, because both the script and the show never tell us, and Brian Fuller gives us an idea, but it's also technically not a solid idea, we can say whatever the fuck we want. So lots of people have lots of different thoughts on it. One of the most common things that people think about that scene is that it's Will working out that Hannibal is the Chesapeake Ripper.
I sort of side with that a little bit. I think it's maybe not him working it out immediately there and then, but I think he's maybe starting to have a few thoughts about Hannibal in a different light than he was already. Just seeing him there and then being able to just stop it and seeing how good he is, I think he's just a bit like, I didn't actually think about you. And maybe to think about you a little bit. I think he's just starting to have little niggling thoughts.
Yeah, because I think a lot of detectives with a retired surgeon would go, yeah, you're someone who's on my list, at least. But yeah, I didn't go there because I don't think. I didn't go there because I don't think at that moment he's able to, like other said. So I generally just thought it was admiration at that point. But it was, again, like I said, it's the same admiration that he has. He feels towards the Chesapeake Ripper, the kind of admiration of the grace and the intelligence of Hannibal, and of course the Ripper.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen how Will talks about the Ripper. He always kind of speaks about the artistic way he kills in a surprisingly almost fond way.
Yeah,
or maybe
absolutely.
not fond, but kind of respectful. We also, in the scene beforehand, when they're speaking and looking at the photos, there's also another moment where Will kind of looks at him as if to be kind of like, you're seeing more of this than makes sense.
Yeah.
Which also kind of suggests the idea that maybe something subconsciously is working. So, would you like to know my interpretation of the scene?
Absolutely.
Yes, please.
Do you remember episode 1 when Will is in the kitchen at the end trying to save Abigail by holding her neck, and Hannibal stands in the hallway, and before he does anything, he just stares at him?
Yes.
To me, my personal interpretation of the scene is that's Will's version of that. In episode 1, Hannibal is interested in Will because he's kind of an enigma, and that's fascinating. And he sees this weird thing and he doesn't understand it, so he wants to play with it.
Yeah.
And that's when he sees Will for the first time. It's not just Will, he's seeing Will. And in this episode, Will is looking at Hannibal, and he's not looking at, honey, I'm going to break your legs. He's not looking at Hannibal the psychiatrist or Hannibal the socialite or the Chesapeake Ripper. He's just seeing Hannibal for the first time.
Yeah.
And something kind of clicks in his brain where it's like, there is no person suit or serial killer or monster. It's just Hannibal for a moment.
That's really cool. I actually like the parallels between episode 1 and this episode.
I don't see anyone ever mention it.
No, I don't think. I don't think anyone, like you said, I don't think anyone would mention it because everyone's talking about the whole Will's trying to figure out, Will's about to figure out. But with the whole actual thing of him with those two parallels, sounds so much actually closer to what they were trying to do.
I say we'll never know. I think it was just a luck of the draw with that shot. Hugh Dancy just made a perfect face and it made a really great scene, and that's all there is to it. But that's how my brain interprets it because it matches so well with the first episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you're right.
And I do agree with the idea that part of his brain is working out, not just from that scene, but from this whole episode alone. We've had several episodes where he's spoken about the fact that the Chesapeake Ripper is guaranteed to be a surgeon. And he's speaking to a very weird surgeon who creates elaborate dinners. It's like, it's not hard to put two and two together.
No, exactly.
So I do think part of his brain is connecting it. It's just not ready to yet.
I think maybe there's also a reluctancy to want to anyway, because I think he does, whether he sees it or not, I think he does have a fondness of Hannibal, and I think the comfortability that he has being around him and sort of maybe the attachment maybe of that he kind of quite literally helps him stay sane, or is just someone that maybe understands him in a different way that other people do. There's that connection that he has with him, and I think if he goes to put two and two together, he would lose that. So I think it would be very easy for him to not want to go down that road, but I think it's maybe coming a bit too obvious for him now that he is starting to think about it more and be able to, like you said, see Hannibal actually for the first time. So now he's like, oh, okay, maybe I should start thinking about what this means, or maybe why Hannibal, like he does eventually question him, why did he stop being a surgeon, and maybe figure out anything from that and start questioning him.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, part of him just isn't ready yet. But with his job and all of his knowledge, everything makes sense. Will already has all the pieces. He's had all the pieces for ages. He has an advantage on everyone else. He knows more about it than anyone else does. He doesn't want to. Part of him doesn't want to put them together yet.
No, he doesn't. No,
it doesn't make sense that someone's so smart and the way in which he pieces together a murder, not how something happens. It doesn't make sense for Will to not have even blinked an eyelid at Hannibal to even consider him as a suspect. To me, it just seems a bit weird. So there must be, I think there's a little bit more to him that he does know that he should consider him but doesn't want to.
I'm not sure which episode it is, but there will be an episode coming up which I think shows an interesting side to Will that might suggest more as to why he's not putting the pieces together. So we'll definitely talk about that when that happens. But yeah, God, it's a good scene.
Yeah, so much in such a few like a small moment. Yeah,
it could be, like you said, it could be just a very good scene that just happened almost in an accident, and people have blown it up to be something bigger when it could be absolutely nothing.
which is cool. And that's one of the fun things about media analysis.
Yeah, I was
It
going to
is,
say
absolutely.
like it's people will leave it up to interpretation on purpose and not really give too much. Like less is more. So the fun is from everyone having their own perspective and their own interpretation, and there's nothing that's wrong or right. So everything that people have a perspective of is correct, and that's the fun of it, I feel like.
Yeah, it's we've gotten very lucky that Brian Fuller is someone who interacts with fans a lot. So
Hi, Brian.
hi, Brian. He has answered a lot of questions over the years, giving more information about stuff. So we have gotten more, but there is still an inherent element to this show, which is whatever you make of it is fine.
Yeah.
There isn't always a right or wrong, and I think that's one of the most fun things about this show. It doesn't have to tell you everything all the time.
Yeah.
I'm going to have a little look through some of my trivia. We've got
Trivia.
a couple of little bits and pieces. So, random thing. I tend not to mention the books very much because there'd be too much information. But the use of using the term sounder, which, as we know from the show, it tells us means a group of pigs, is unique to the show. It's not used in the books, which I quite like. I really like the sounder analogy.
I like that. That's really cool.
Well, it makes sense, doesn't it? Because it's not just an animal; it's specifically livestock, and what is used. What are the organs used for? Will's quote in the apartment with the corpse in the bath, where Jack asks him how he sees the Ripper, and he says, "I see him as one of those pitiful things." That is from the books. And it's an incredibly good quote. It is specific. Will describes the Chesapeake Ripper in that specific way to another detective in Red Dragon. And it's kind of interesting to me because it's a really good quote, but it's also quite it's very strange.
It is a very strange quote.
It doesn't feel entirely Will Graham to me.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah, it feels a little bit like, I see that's from the books. That's the book Will Graham. It's not our Will Graham. But it doesn't matter because it's just such a good, weird quote. I'm going to read the whole quote for the sake of the podcast. It's just so good. Which is, "I see him as one of those pitiful things, sometimes born in hospitals. They feed it, keep it warm, yet they don't put it on machines. They let it die, but he doesn't die. He looks normal, and nobody can tell what he is."
Stop.
It's horrible. It's really horrible.
It's a very good quote. And now I've got to think of a new favourite
No,
quote. So,
you could just say that and say it again.
Yeah, I'll give it to it. I'll say it again.
do say it again. We'll have it a million times in the podcast. I put some images in our little voice chat. Some were for the locations, but there are some of the bathroom scene, and I will put them in the document as well. So that beautiful turquoise bathroom apartment is extremely similar to the bathroom in room 237 in The Shining. So this is our main. Yeah. I think it's the second big Shining parallel. They've very clearly tried to recreate it, and as I mentioned before, Kubrick's version of The Shining is one of Brian Fuller's favourite films. It's also one of my favourite films. And I love it, because Room 237 is fucking terrifying. And the way they've recreated it is so gorgeous. It's one of the most visually stunning elements of this whole episode.
I know Room 237 is terrifying, but I want a bathroom like that. That looks so
pretty.
I
mean, same. Look at it.
Yeah, it's so accessible.
Wow, there's a lot similar. The lights and the legs of the sinks and everything. It's quite cool.
Yeah, the fact that they've got the weird rails on the sink is where the fuck did they get those from?
Exactly.
Someone would have made it, probably.
Yeah, it's such a good job.
I do want a bigger bath. Saying that, I want a bigger bath, but otherwise, yeah. I want to remake
Why does
that.
the bath look photoshopped in that screenshot from Hannibal?
It does a bit, doesn't it?
Look at the curtain and the bath itself. It looks very photoshopped.
It does. It's so cool.
I think it's mainly because they're pops, really, isn't it? So, you know.
God, the people who made this show are fucking geniuses. I mentioned to Shaira in the lead up to this episode that I had things to say about Andrew Caldwell. So, Andrew Caldwell is the insurance health guy that we see Hannibal clearly going to kill.
I found him annoying straight away. I was like,
he's rude as fuck.
He's rude as fuck. I was like, excuse me, if someone talked to me like that, I would consider killing him too.
He is so very rude. So, yeah, who's like, a disease is not an infection.
I'm gonna know if you lie. So don't lie. Right, fuck off.
Yeah, he's just like, fucking tell me. And it's like, So the question is, why is he doing that? Why is he insinuating there might be something wrong with Hannibal? Do you have any thoughts on that?
No. Unless it's to do with the fact that, like, something comes up in his blood because of the fact that he, eats human organs.
I have seen other people suggest that, actually.
It could be, but I thought I went a completely different way. I thought he was just being a facetious. Not facetious. He was just being a really annoying, one of those really annoying insurance guys who's like, I'm going to get as much money out of you as possible. So tell me now.
So this hasn't been confirmed, but it's a big theory that a lot of people think is correct. I personally think it's correct. I don't think it's a theory. I think it's the truth. Which is... So I'm going to tell you something completely different. In the movie Hannibal, there's a character called Krendler, and he assumes that Hannibal is gay for liking fancy things. This is a very common stereotype. It's a big trope for eccentric older bachelors who are into things like art and the opera and cooking are very often assumed to be gay.
Mm-hmm.
So now that you know that, do you have any thoughts as to what he might have been insinuating?
I see what he's insinuating. Oh god, I fucking hate this so much.
Rude.
He's taking a blood test and insinuating that he needs to tell him in case he has some kind of condition. I think it's very clear that he's suggesting he thinks he might be gay and therefore may have HIV.
Yeah, fucking prick.
Yeah, oh god, I hate him even more now. What kind?
Yeah.
But to be fair, it's maybe kind of fitting with the time that it probably occurred.
No, not really. It's from like the 2010s.
Yeah,
I mean, still.
I mean, it still happens now, but like it's still like the 80s, yeah.
Wanker.
But yeah, no, I think the implication is that he's homophobic and therefore thinks he might be at risk because he thinks that Hannibal is gay. There's also a chance, potentially, that Hannibal may have had to reveal his sexual history on his paperwork as well. So he may also be interpreting from that, potentially. Obviously, we don't know Hannibal's sexual partner history, but we do know that he's pansexual, so he may have had any number of gender of partners in the past.
Yeah.
So there could be that element to it as well. But either way, it's homophobia.
Don't like it even more.
And we
picked that first.
So, I don't agree with killing people, but he was better off on Hannibal's plate than not.
Yeah.
Yeah, as I said, we eat homophobes.
Yep. Yeah, we do. Eat the homophobes.
And the rich.
And the rich, and the rude.
And the rude.
So, let's talk about music. Classical music in general is used throughout the Hannibal series, as well as all of the fucking stunning original scores. But this episode... Not every scene, like a lot of the therapy scenes don't have them, but a lot of the one-off outside of the office scenes with Hannibal play classical music. And it's only Hannibal. They only play when Hannibal is in the scene, which I love because he's the connoisseur of music. So we spoke about the opera a little bit, but there are 5 other pieces of classical music used in the episode. Because I'm a nerd, I had to individually research all of them. I had to figure out what they were. Then I had to figure out, was there any meaning? So to my knowledge, there's never been any confirmation as to whether any of these pieces of music have any significance to the show, like other than that they work for the scene and they sound good. So anything I say is purely my interpretation. And it's not canon. So the first piece of music is Chopin's Prelude Number 13 in F sharp major. That plays during the scene with Hannibal and Alana in the kitchen. Nothing to say about that. It's just a very nice piece of piano music.
It was a very nice piece of piano music.
Yeah, absolutely lovely. Chopin, wunderbar. The music during Hannibal's organ preparation scene, like the preparation montage, which is one of my favourite bits of the whole episode.
Oh, so good.
It's from Faust, Act 2, Le Veau d'Or. The English version of that is the Song of the Golden Calf. So there's mentions of Faust in the book, which I won't go into because that's its own thing. But this specific song is sung by Mephistopheles, I won't get that wrong, who is the demon in Faust, the one who the contract is made with. And this song is basically a celebration of false idols and debauchery. It's his cynical manifesto about people. And during the part of the opera that's happening, there's like loads of students at a carnival and they're all celebrating, and Mephistopheles is just being all fuck people. So the fact that that's happening while he's preparing organs is so good.
Brilliant. Yeah, wow.
Yeah, that's really cool.
is incredibly fitting. So it doesn't just
That's
fit the
really
rhythm
cool.
really well. It's just like, it's very Hannibal. It's the devil, basically, which I fucking love. The music playing when Will misses his appointment is Lacrimosa from Mozart's Requiem. So Lacrimosa derives from Our Lady of Sorrows, which is the title for the Virgin Mary. The 18th and 19th century Latin stanzas are centered on the death and resurrection of Jesus. So I wouldn't say I don't interpret any specific meaning other than Hannibal's relationship with God. The stanzas are full of tears will be that day when from the ashes shall arise the guilty man to be judged. Therefore spare him, O God, merciful Lord Jesus, grant them eternal rest. Amen.
Interesting.
I think you can just easily tie that in with his God complex.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's very somber and beautiful, and he's so sad.
Sad boy.
Is Hannibal the sad Virgin Mary? The music that plays during the ambulance scene is Patria Oppressa, which is from Verdi's Macbeth. That title
I
translates.
recognise that.
Yeah, it translates as downtrodden country. So this piece of music plays while Scottish refugees are standing by the English border, and they're downtrodden, and they're all like bundled up out in the cold. And in some performances of it, they're like in the snow. This, and also I'm going to tie this into the next piece of music, which is the music playing as Hannibal prepares for the dinner party at the end, is Vivaldi's Four Seasons Winter. So also out in the cold, there are sonnets that accompany the seasons, and winter is unsurprisingly about treading the harsh climates of snow and ice, and the trepidation brought about by the dangers of a cold landscape. But it ends with, we feel the chill north winds course through the home despite the locked and bolted doors. This is the winter, which nonetheless brings its own delights. And something we don't hear about in the Hannibal TV show is Hannibal is sort of a refugee. He is from Lithuania. Originally, it was like during the Civil War. Very, very bad things happened to Hannibal's family through like Russian Soviet occupation. And thus, we know Hannibal goes to Paris and ends up, of course, going to the US. He is an immigrant. And him and his younger sister and his parents had to suffer very harsh, terrible winters out in the snow. So these two pieces of music combined with Hannibal's past are kind of sad. But yeah, whether it was intentional or not, both pieces of music fit very well with Hannibal as a character.
Yes.
Wow.
That's really cool trivia. But yeah,
Good job.
I think I remember. At least I remember. At least I knew that he was like. Unfortunately, it was a bit of a spoiler for me, but I knew this before we started the thing about Hannibal being an immigrant. So yeah.
Well,
yeah,
I mean, we know he's Lithuanian, so we can draw quite a few things. The show is a little different because it's set in a different time to the books. So anything you kind of know from the books doesn't necessarily stand as canon to the show.
Yes, I don't think the whole Russian part.
The Soviet occupation and like world wars going on and stuff don't match up with Hannibal. But things like harsh winters, being an immigrant, stuff like that does match up with Hannibal. Still, that's something you can't take away from him as a character.
Yeah, same bestie.
There's a couple of bits and pieces in the script, but not a whole lot in this one, which is great for me. There's some little bits of cut dialogue, see if any is kind of worth mentioning. There's a little bit more conversation between Hannibal and Franklin talking about Tobias, but it's not especially interesting. It's more again about Franklin. Franklin does specifically say that Tobias is his best friend in the script, but that he's not Tobias's best friend. So he says that before Hannibal does. In the script, when Bedelia is talking about kind of the person suit, Hannibal in the script says, "I prefer we call it a human shield," and Bedelia says, "I'm sure you do. You're a complicated man, Hannibal." There's another little bit of conversation between Will and Hannibal during their session, I believe. So Will Graham says, "So these are just conversations," and Hannibal says, "With your friend, the psychiatrist, we do have a higher level of intimacy than the common doctor-patient relationship, almost as though we have a daughter together." And Will responds, "I don't have a lot of friends." Hannibal says, "Having a better understanding of why people do what they do doesn't make it any easier to socialise." So Will asks, "Is it easy for you?" And Hannibal says, "I cope." I'm kind of sad that's not in there, because it's a conversation showing that Will struggles with friendship and Hannibal admitting that he kind of does as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. It's very sweet. Also, the scene with Andrew Caldwell and Hannibal and the blood withdrawal, that's not in the script. That's purely for the show. It shows the aftermath with the car and everything is in the script, but the whole insurance bit is only in the script.
I really like that bit.
Right? I'm very glad they wrote it in because it's so good. There's a little bit of cut dialogue in the morgue between Will, Brian, and Jimmy Price in the script where Brian says to Will, "You slammed that door in my face," and Will responds, "It was more of a gentle swing," and Jimmy says it actually was fairly gentle. Which is really silly. There's a really nice script detail during the scene with Alana and Hannibal in the kitchen, where it says, "Camera finds Alana dicing onions, not quite as handy as Hannibal with her knife skills, but skilled nonetheless. There's almost a sibling warmth to their dynamic, but something more softly vibrates just beneath the surface," which I think is great.
All of that was in the script thing.
Yeah, the script goes from like just dialogue, and then every now and then you'll get a really beautiful piece of detail.
Yeah, that's so interesting.
Really cool.
Sibling?
That's really cool.
Sibling?
Yeah.
But then he was like, "Oh, why didn't we those
Well, it then says that something more softly vibrates. I think it's supposed to mean they're very comfortable with one another and kind of pally, but there's something a bit something a bit saucier than just siblings. Which I think that's quite accurate to their dynamics. They do seem very comfortable with one another, but also flirty. Also, have you noticed how they can rarely have a conversation without talking about Will?
Yeah.
Just going to slip that in there, that they're very flirty, but they're always talking about Will.
They're always talking about Will. I'm not sure if I noticed, but is it always Hannibal bringing up Will, or does Alana sometimes bring up Will?
I think they both do.
Yeah.
But I will tell you it's a common running theme between them.
Yes. Well, Will is their tying thing, I think.
He certainly is.
Their bond.
It's either that or they talk about their feelings. Like, what else are they actually going to talk about?
Yeah,
thoughts I'm not going to say yet.
It's either that, it's either that or they finally end up in bed together, and then Hannibal also gets Will because he's pansexual, so you know.
I will actually no. I'm not going to say that thought. It was something to do with threesomes. I'm not going to say it. So let's go to our ending stuff.
I think I've already mentioned this, that my favourite quote was exactly the same as what Felix mentioned, and I'm going to read it out again because it's my favourite quote. So, "I see him as one of those pitiful things, sometimes born in hospitals. They feed it, keep it warm, but they don't put it on the machines. They let it die, but he doesn't die. He looks normal, and nobody can tell what he is." And I like this quote because, one, it feels very, like I said, it feels very off Will. Especially the Will that we see, and I've not read the book, so it could be the book Will, it could not be. Well, I haven't read the books. I haven't read the whole book entirely. I have pieces handed to me by certain media, and yeah, I also thought it was very mean of Will. I didn't think that's something that Will would say, especially for what he's talking about, because he's actually talking about, unfortunately, premature dying babies, and it's like, it's not something that I thought Will would think Will would call pitiful or like abnormal. That's not something that I thought Will would do or say or think of the Chesapeake Ripper as, because it's not something that screams killer, because it's always like, oh, these people, if they survived, that they would turn out as killers. It's kind of a bit cruel. But I still really love the quote. It was still really quote, mainly because it was jarring to me, but also mainly because it was really, really well said by Hugh Dancy, as always, him being an amazing actor. My favourite scene, so I honourable mention to the closing the door on Zella, because I just love that. That made me laugh out loud. I was like, ha! The grown-ups are talking. Will shuts the door and continues to talk to Jack. But my favourite scene is with Alana ex Hanny. I loved that scene. It was super cute. I love the fact that Hannibal has kept a special beer for Alana, and Alana has such a good palate too. It's like, yay! Alana's amazing palate. I unfortunately I love food, but have a bad palate. I can't taste and tell you what I'm tasting.
Relatable.
But I love food. I love tasting things. I put things in my mouth a lot. I love food. I like to put everything in my mouth. It's not a good thing. And also, yes, giggity. But no, I like to bite and put everything in my mouth. Weirdly, I've not dropped that habit from being a baby.
Hello, autism.
Hello, autism. And then I think my predictions for that was my favorite quote and my favorite moment. My prediction for the next episode is more livers, hearts, lungs, intestines, and also more members of the Hannibal cannibal ring / cult. And then we'll probably through that we'll probably get to the closest to the Chesapeake Ripper. Well, to a version of the Chesapeake Ripper that we'll probably catch. I have a feeling. One of my feelings is I have a feeling that they're going to catch, quote unquote, the Chesapeake Ripper. But it's not going to be the actual Chesapeake Ripper who we know is Hannibal. It's going to be someone that they think, without a doubt, is the Chesapeake Ripper. With, however, we'll have no, this isn't the Chesapeake Ripper, but it's close enough to the Chesapeake Ripper that he's just going to concede for Jack's sake. That's my predictions for the next few episodes.
Awesome.
For the next episodes.
Welcome to my final moments of the podcast. Okay, so I'm gonna start with my favorite quote because I only have one this week. I've been very good. Basically, you know, when Hannibal is saying to Alana about that, how those people thought they were having an affair. The quote, the only bit of the quote that is my favorite quote is him just looking and going, "Why didn't we?" Oh, joking! Are you off your fucking rocker? That was so hot. I was like, shit! He didn't have to go that hard. Like, fuck me. I was like, whoa. I was just kind of just thrown off my chair a minute. I was like, hey.
Amazing.
You know, I predominantly like women. I can't be having mixed feelings like this every fucking week. Anyway. I was just like, whoa, okay. Whoa. It was beautiful. I loved it. Anyway. I have two moments though. Okay, so the unconventional psychiatrist is all I've written down in my notes. It's just when what's it called? Hannibal's like, oh, I have an unconventional psychiatrist, and then Will's like, oh, well, we have that in common then. I was like, fucking hell. It's just the way that Will has these one-liners where he's given absolute fucking slay of sass and he just has no fucking idea about it. It's the fact that he has no idea of how absolutely sassy he is and how, like, how much these just one-liners are just so fucking iconic. And this dude is just there, like, fixing his glasses, looking around like, yeah, cool. So what are we talking about now? And it's just like, hang on a minute, you just dropped one massive fat steamy one. Let's just soak that in for a second. We have that in common. I just thought that was great. And then oh yeah, the other one was when Will is sat sleeping with his eyes wide open like some fish, and Hannibal comes in and he's like, I have a 24-hour cancellation policy. And then Will's kind of like, oh, sorry. And then he's like, no apology needed. I'm like, what the fuck has just happened? Because like, it's just sort of like funny how like Hannibal's kind of be like, I have a 24-hour cancellation policy. Like, this is my rules. And then Will was like, just didn't give a fuck about what he just said. It was like, oh, sorry. Like, I was asleep. I was awake. What happened? And then he gets Hannibal wrapped around his tiny little finger, and he's like, "Oh, you seemed out of it. You were awake, like you were not here." And then Will's just like, "Oh, sorry," like all moping around. He's like, "No apology needed." And I'm like, "Well, but babe, what happened to your 24-hour cancellation policy? You were pissed off. He didn't tell you anything. You were upset that your boyfriend wasn't there at the door with flowers and a bottle of wine. And now all of a sudden you're just like, oh yeah, no, it's fine. Don't need to say sorry." I was like, fucking hell, there was a whirlwind. But I thought it was really funny that he was just like, yeah, 24-hour cancellation policy. No, it's fine. Don't worry. Don't be sorry. It's fine. Why are you being sorry? No, he literally said no apology necessary. And I'm like, well, what happened with your initial point anyway? That's what I felt. A great episode. I think one of my favourites so far. A lot of whirlwind of emotions. A lot of things happened. Artistically very good. DOP was on their shit this episode. Next episode predictions. I think that maybe Will may start looking at Hannibal and seeing him, as we've said, a little bit more. Whether he will question him, I don't know. But I think maybe there'll be little bits of moments where, like when he came and brought the bottle of wine but wasn't going to stay for the dinner party, and he was like, why did you stop becoming a surgeon? I feel like there was a lot of undertones with that question. He sort of wanted to question him in a way, and then it was just like when he gave the response and the way that Will nodded, I think he was just like, oh yeah, that makes sense, trying to brush the wiggling thoughts out of him. I think there's going to be more moments like that in the next episode or the next coming episodes. But I think maybe a couple more times in the next episode he's going to maybe question him a little bit in a way that's sort of like underlying of like, should I be questioning you? Should I be considering you in this whole ordeal? And I think also someone's going to get a blowy, whether it is Will or Hannibal. One of them is doing it to the other one.
So gay sex has now turned very specific.
Yeah, well, the gay sex is still there, but I just think someone's going to start it off with a good old-fashioned blowy.
Yeah. Can I just say that I have my new favourite quote, but not like TV quote, but my new favourite podcast quote, and that is sleeping with his eyes open like some kind of fish. Melisa, 2024, episode 7.
So reminded me, I was just sat there like some fish, and it was just like asleep, but not actually closing his eyes, which I know is a thing. But bless him, he's just a very lonely, confused, like upset, needs a bit of love and a bit of dick fish.
I love your quote.
Thank you.
I mean, Will is a fisherman.
Oh my god, that wasn't even. Do you know what? No, actually, no, that was intentional. I was waiting for you to come up to it. I'm glad that you did. Thank you very much. Mm-hmm. That was so 100% my prerogative, and I did that.
We were just going back to that whole water imagery thing.
Yeah. Exactly. You took the words right out of my mouth.
Stupid show. Cool. So my favorite quote was quite a simple one, which is when Hannibal asks, "Am I your psychiatrist, or are we simply having conversations?" And Will responds, "Yes, I think is the answer to that."
He's like, "Are we friends or are we more than friends?"
Oh yeah, that kind of sums up their entire relationship. It's just like, is this official? Is it not? Are we normal people? Is this professional? And the answer is both. I don't know. My favorite moment is obvious and boring. It's the ambulance scene, because Will's face. I've watched this episode far too many times and overanalyzed it to death.
It's a good scene.
So it's beautiful, and the music is so good, and Hannibal's fist deep in a man, and it's perfect. My kind of second favorite scene is the entire organ preparation montage. Because again, perfect music, it's so good. Just also, I enjoy cooking stuff, so I like watching prep some organs. Next episode predictions. Hannibal will teach Will how to perform a tracheotomy with a pen.
Oh.
Like in all those bad surgery shows.
Yeah.
Not that anyone needs to know this, but don't do that. You can't perform a tracheotomy with a pen. Don't do that.
No, you can't. No.
I mean, don't do that. Give it a go, but you shouldn't.
I don't even want to try and say it.
Unless you are a trained surgeon.
Yeah, of course.
Unless you're trying to murder someone as well.
Well, actually, if you want to kill someone, do it.
Do it, but no, otherwise don't.
But don't murder people. Unless. But don't murder people.
Unless. Unless they're rich, they're homophobic, etc., etc.
Do murder Andrew Caldwell. That's fine. Hannibal's done it. It's all good.
Yeah, Hannibal did it.
Are you prepared for my sign-off? I'm horribly proud of this one, which means I'm back on my pun game.
Oh, I'm so ready.
Ooh, yes, absolutely prepared.
Okay. So, here is my sign-off to give you some teasers for the next episode, which is episode 8 from Arge. I won't string you along, but the next episode is a bit of a fiddle. Will might be in trouble because it looks like it isn't just Hannibal who has a history of violence. Fate and Circumstance is an independent podcast brought to you by Felix Fanfaron Fern, Melisa Suzan, and Shaira Bambi. You can find and follow us on Twitter and Tumblr at HannibalPod. We are fans of the show NBC's Hannibal and do not own the rights to any of the materials discussed, merely appreciators. The music used in this podcast is Tchaikovsky's Op. No. 40 Waltz by Kevin MacLeod, licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 4.0 license. Thanks for listening. My next episode... Whoa, Jesus Christ!
Sorry, I accidentally closed Discord. And I don't know if that was my entrance. Oh no, I did set that was my entrance sound. All I heard was you saying beautifully, his fist deep into a man, and then it...
Good Lord. Always
I'm so sorry, Felix. I'm so sorry.
Shat myself.
Oh my god, I'm so sorry, everybody. I'm so sorry.
Oh, it's fine. We'll find a way to fit that in somehow. I'm just gonna stick it after the ending credits bit.